Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me on Alzheimer Speaks Radio today. I'm Lori LeBay, the host and founder, and we are all about shifting our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And so I hope you'll subscribe and learn new techniques and tips and resources to help you live graciously alongside dementia. My own mother had dementia for 30 years, and so I get the frustration and isolation and the exhaustion, the guilt, but man, there's a whole other side to this story, one where you can find joy and purpose and passion and this increased connection that is unbelievable. A journey that teaches you new ways to live your life, not just with your person with dementia, but your whole life. Alleviates some stress and increase that power of joy. We also, along with trying to shift that dementia care culture, one of the other things we do is to help companies increase their brand footprint by leveraging all of our multimedia platforms, not only just the radio show, but our YouTube channel and our blog, can even involve speaking engagements and so forth. So if you're a company trying to expand, your base, reach out to me and I would love to talk to you. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of organizations. One is the Memory Cafe Directory. I'm a big believer in memory cafes, which are for people with dementia and their care partners to come together and live in community and have this gathering of like-minded people. The one that I happen to facilitate, we get together a couple times a month. Sometimes people get together every week. Others go once a month. They're all a little bit different, but dementia brings people together, but it's not the main focus. It's like a gathering of friends. You talk about everything that affects you in life, and these are no different. So you can go to the memorycafedirectory.com, memorycafedirectory.com to find one near you. Or maybe you have one up and running and you want to get in the directory. There is no cost. So again, just go to the Memory Cafe Directory and contact them, and Dave will be more than glad to get you listed there. I also want to mention a wonderful book called Parental Dementia, which is a guide through all those difficult questions by Keith Gallus, who has spent more than 20 years helping families work through all those questions that keep popping up on the journey of dementia. The book even has some great worksheets in the back to kind of keep your thoughts and needs organized, and just to give you a little bit more confidence on this journey. And you can actually get a discount by using the code Lori, Lori, and you'll save $5.99. Who doesn't like that? The book can be purchased at parentaldementia.com. That's parentaldementia.com. And, if it's something that you can't use, chances are you probably know somebody with dementia, and this would be a great holiday gift for a family member. So check it out. And again, go to parentaldementia.com. I also want to mention stall catchers because I love this concept. Stall catchers allows us as individuals to actually participate in analyzing real Alzheimer's data by playing a video game, and kids 6 to 96 are involved with this all around the world. So go to stallcatchers.com to find out a little bit more information. It's not difficult, and it can be a fun competition. Some schools are doing it, some libraries, some countries are kind of bantering back and forth with this competition as well. So it's a wonderful cause, and again, helping push research forward is something I think we all need. And then before I introduce our guests, I have to thank each and every one of you. You are such loyal listeners. I thank you for your subscriptions to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio and your likes, your clicks, your shares on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, because by working together, we are raising each other's voices and we are building a sense of community where people can feel this sense of collaboration and comfort, and they can find those resources that they so badly need. And in the end, they're gonna, we're all gonna be able to battle dementia together. And I think that's really the only way we're gonna win. Now, today our show is about Laughter on Call, which is a fabulous organization in your if you're a family member or if you are a community or a business that serves people with dementia, you're going to want to listen to this show. We have on with us today writer and comedian Dani Klein Modisett, and she is the founder of Laughter on Call, a company that provides, I love this, comedy care by pairing comedians with seniors with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And they also train healthcare providers and families how to connect with shared laughter. What a great concept. Who can't use more of that? So, Dani, I always like to start out by asking my guests if they've been personally touched by dementia. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually how my whole Laughter on Call business started, is that my mother has Alzheimer's dementia, and she's had it, I think we're going on year 8. Mm-hmm. She was diagnosed when she was 80, but I think there were symptoms prior to that. We lived on different coasts, so I didn't see her day to day. But I got a call from a friend of hers saying that she is arguing with waiters and can't fill out a deposit slip. And the arguing with waiters, she was a feisty lady, so that didn't throw me. But the not filling out a deposit slip, that was like, she was very good with money. She always worked with money. So that was the one that I was like, So I flew in to New York. I live in Los Angeles, and my sister flew in from Boston, and we hired people to help. It was clear that the apartment was in total disarray. And she had gotten a rescue dog too, which we always think is that was just too much, tracking all that. So we hired a dog walker. And anyway, we hired all these people, and both of us went home, and then she fired everybody 2 weeks later, which I hear is pretty common. She was an independent woman. And then we started hiring, introducing more people, and eventually found a team. And then I got a geriatric care manager. So I guess this is a very long way of saying that, yes, I've been in the Alzheimer's world for 8 years now. So we're very involved with Alzheimer's.
Okay. So really that personal experience was the thing that kicked you off to create Laughter on Call then?
Yeah, definitely. I moved her from New York City, where she lived for 3 years with that care that I talked about, 24-hour care with a geriatric care manager. And it was very expensive in New York City. I mean, now I hear the numbers are also very high everywhere, but at that point, $17,000 a month just seemed crazy. So I brought her to LA. I found a place in Los Angeles called Silverado Beverly Place. You're familiar with it? And they have a very specific point of view, and they're also entirely memory care, which I really appreciate. I don't like when you go, memory care dementia. I really didn't appreciate when you went somewhere and they would be like, that's the memory care over there. I think that there's a little bit of implicit shame still and isolation with these illnesses, and I just would prefer more acceptance. That's what I'm moving toward, both personally and professionally, is getting people to show up and kind of be okay with it and not sequester it. And so when I saw Silverado and like there were dogs running around and kids everywhere and all the behavior that you could want and nobody was, it really moved me. And I thought, oh, this is where my mother should live. So I brought her to Los Angeles and she came in and there's a big chandelier and it was, you know, almost like a hotel. And then she realized, I think pretty quickly that it wasn't a hotel. Like I think within like a week or two. And then she realized she wasn't leaving and she became withdrawn and depressed and she wasn't eating. And I really felt terrible about it. And I was like, oh, because my mother was born and raised in New York City. So I remember I was at my dentist and because it's LA, every dentist is like a life coach and she's like telling me what to do. Like, you know, she's wonderful, but no buts, she's wonderful. And I had a tear and I said, I just wish, you know, I was a comedian and I just wish I could hire a comedian to make her laugh. And she said, well, why don't you do that? You should do that. And I was like, oh, wait, can you do that? And she said, yeah, just put it out in the world that this is what you're looking for and see what happens. So I went home and I got on Facebook and I wrote, looking for a comedian interested in gerontology paid gig, because I wanted people to respond. And my phone rang like 2 minutes later and it was a friend of mine in New York who's a comedian. And she said, oh, I just got off the phone with my friend in LA and she really wants to work with seniors. She's like talking to people on park benches. Like she really wants to do this. So I called the woman up and she came over and she sat down with my mother and she just took her in fully and like looked at her and didn't make nice and, you know, didn't say like, oh, hi, how's it going? Just none of that. She was very clear and just said, I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I know you're thinking, who is this schmuck just sitting here talking and talking? And there was something about that Yiddish word that, and the New York accent, and it all felt very familiar to her, I think. And so she just was like laughing. She just started laughing. And it was so remarkable that it was undeniable. And then they started they created a relationship and they were like drinking water together and laughing and talking. And it was just everything that I wanted. So I told the woman, great, you're hired. And she started coming to see my mother like 8 hours a week. And it really changed everything for her. It really did. I have to say, like, I have written books and I tour as a comic. Like I really wasn't intending for this to happen. Like it just, when I saw the results, it was so undeniable. And then another family saw it and they wanted it. And so, you know, then I wrote an article about the whole experience for AARP magazine and got like hundreds of responses from around the country. So I thought, you know, this is so needed. It's so needed. And it's such a kind of kismet because comedians always need money. Like they always are looking for survival jobs and ways to use their talent. And there's this just, unfortunately, ever-growing population of people who need to laugh and need to feel a connection and need to feel seen. And that's pretty much how that all started. Yeah.
What a beautiful story. I mean, you know, I with my mom in her journey of 30 years, that was one of the things I noticed. So many people thought, well, you can't laugh.
Yeah.
It's too serious. You can't laugh, you know? Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, that like brings us up, fills us up, connects us together. I mean, you know, they say laughter is the best medicine. And I really believe laughter and music both are so critically important. And when you were telling the story about your mom and kind of the Yiddish accent and all of that, you know, just giving her dignity, making her feel at home and having it be a fun experience. I mean, what more do any of us want than that?
Definitely all of that is true and changed her life. And now we're kind of everywhere. You know, people are recognizing that. I mean, one of the other, you know, in terms of what you were saying about showing up, my father died of cancer like 22, almost 23 years ago now. And it was painful and morphine and the whole thing. But like people were there until the day before he died. People would visit him. And when my mother got this disease, pretty much within 6 months, she was down to one friend who would visit and spend time with her because it was whatever, uncomfortable, frustrating, and now it's to the point where friends and family and I hear this from a lot of people, they just feel like, what's the point? She's not going to remember. She's not really in there. What's the point? That's not the woman I knew, and all of that. And maybe all of that is true. Like, she's not the woman that we knew. And it is frustrating, and she won't remember, but she will feel it in the moment. And if that has value to you, then that's kind of the meaning of life, is being in the moment. That's what we aspire to. It's why people sit in yoga class and have that thing at the top where, they always give you some great spiritual thing to think about, like, be in the moment. It's all in the being. Well, people with dementia are living that. They are in the moment. That's it. Like this moment, like not even the next, this it, right now. That's it. And so it's, I just see what a difference it made for my mother. And now that we're getting just unbelievable. We have someone in Portland and 2 people in Atlanta and someone in Baltimore and a person in Pennsylvania and people up and down the coast. And, the response is so, every time someone texts me, this is amazing, you made my mother laugh, or you made my grandmother, I haven't seen her laugh, like, I get teary, because I think it's really amazing, and it helps people, and it makes everybody feel better. The family feels better because there's a little less pressure, and they know they're doing something good for the person that they love.
One of the things you had mentioned about people think, oh, they're not the person who was, but we all got to look in the mirror and go, hey, I'm not the person I was either. But we forget that we're all evolving and we're all changing, and it might not always be in the direction we want, but that doesn't mean any of us are less of a person. And, that emotional connection is so important. And people, for whatever reason, think, well, they need to spit out a full, correct sentence to me. That's what they're looking for. And if somebody can't do that, then, some people look at, well, what's the point? And it's like, yet there's all these nonverbals. And I think that's one of the things that comedians are really good at, playing off a lot of those nonverbals and just expressing things in different ways and being more animated. So it's more pronounced. So it's more visible. Many times too, where a lot of us, we just kind of get into this rut of, we have to speak sentences and our perceptions have to be exactly like everybody else's. And yet, I learned with my own mom that her perceptions, she used kind of, I think we all use the same equation, but she was drawing from a different pool to create her perceptions than what I was.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so, for me, I always say it's our current attitude plus our past experiences create our perceptions, and our perceptions trigger our reactions. And if we back that out, it's easy to find the whys of maybe some of those, and I hate even using this word, behaviors that we don't want. And they're really not a behavior. In my mind, they're a reaction, they're a trigger, they're a clue to say something's not right here. That's why I'm acting this way. I'm trying to communicate because I can't maybe put it in words. And getting people to, I think in this life, slow down, be present. We always heard, be present, live in the moment.
Right.
And a lot of people just thought, oh, that's new age, that's, and they kind of taught, it was like too iffy for them, too, whatever. And to me, one of the biggest gifts my mom taught me was to slow down, to be present, to realize, and we all have said this to ourselves and to others, that the world will go on if we don't respond immediately to that call or that text or that email. But we have this pressure that's built up, and we see it in society, the stress people are feeling, and a lot of that we've done to ourselves. And so I really think dementia is here to teach us to live better.
Wow, that is a bold statement. Like
I
I've been wanting to say that, frankly.
Yeah, because for me, it's really been true.
Wow.
And so, now I speak and train around the country, and I talk about all the cool things people are doing. Like, laughter on call. This is important stuff. One of the most frustrating things for me as a daughter, my mom's been gone 5 years and lived with her 30. But one of the most frustrating things was, where are the resources?
Right.
Where do I, as an individual person, get to choose what I think will work best for my person and for my family?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was really controlled and very limited. And that's one of the things when you mentioned Silverado, I love, because they've gone all over the world, searching things out for different methods to be able to do things in a better light, to make sure that there's respect and dignity and fun.
They're big fans of Laughter on Call. We've done a lot of work with them at various locations and with Lauren. And I've done I also do training now for healthcare workers and family workshops, because, you talked about like the nonverbal, and, people don't understand the value of just being silly. Like, just go, like, that will make my mother laugh. And other people, and my mother doesn't really have language anymore. She kind of just makes noises, but she's present. And if you look her in the eye and make a funny face, she'll make it back.
Yep.
And so in the workshops, like, it's a 8-step acronym that I came up with, and it teaches very simple comedians tools, but it ends with an S. And in the S, everyone has to be silly. Like, every single person has to stand there and do something that doesn't make any sense, and creating a workshop, for people to be able to do that, to give them permission and say, here's being nutty, so that the next time they're in that set of circumstances, they've already exercised that at least once. They know, oh yeah, that's that silly thing that I did with that lady. And it can break tension and create connection, and it's nonverbal. So,
well, and I think one of the most important factors that so many people don't realize is what we bring into the room is mirrored back to us.
100%.
And so, what do you want? You want angry? You want agitated? You want disconnected? Or do you want happy? I mean, really, is this really a choice? I mean, do we really have to think that hard about that? But we ignore the factors, because I think sometimes, especially if family and staff alike, we can be causing the problem, but then we'd have to look in the mirror and go, I got to do stuff different. Mm-hmm. And so we don't want to go there. It's easier to blame the disease. And one of the things people with dementia tell me all the time, which I love, is they're like, oh yeah, everything gets blamed on the disease. You know what? That's my personality before, and I still have it now. Mm-hmm. So don't be blaming it all on the disease. I like to relax before I got dementia. I still do. I like to laugh and be engaged.
Well, definitely my mother was someone who loved to laugh. I think that's why the idea came to me, because I was like, she was like she just loved that. So I think that, the other thing that I talk about, at least for people who work for me, you can't bring anything in the room other than joy. Like, whatever it is, leave it outside, because they're so sensitive. And that's what they're going to pick up on. Like, they do improvisation. I have one part of the business is that we send 2 improvisers in, and they do engage the residents to also improvise with them. Whatever, there's no wrong answer. They just throw stuff out. So this woman, one of my people was, frantically looking for keys. It was like some storyline that had she had to find her keys. And then suddenly the woman next to her with dementia is like frantically looking for keys, because she's mirroring and she's getting anxious. And so it was just a great example of whatever you're giving out is what you're going to get back. So if you're upset, and that's another reason why, there was even an opening for a business like this, because family members, understandably, I'm one of them, come in and they see the parent and the energy is like, wow, or crying, or It's some energy that is not helpful in the moment. Although authentic, it's just not necessarily going to help your loved one.
Well, and I think with laughter and being able to create joy, it kind of takes that pressure off the guilt. Because so many times, especially when family members place a loved one, they have so much guilt because they most likely have said, I wasn't going to do that. But that was when things were different and things have changed. Maybe for them personally and their loved one who's got dementia, it doesn't really make any difference. That's irrelevant. Things have changed and it's okay. And there's support there. And staff can be what I call family by choice. They're not there to take over. They're not there to put you down because you can't be there. They're there to fill in because they want to be. And so when you can show that emotional connection that you get my loved one, that relaxes them. So they don't come in attacking and looking for things that are wrong. Because when you've got limited time, and I was one of those daughters initially, I got to look for what's wrong because I want the very best for mom. And so she can't have the very best if I don't tell them what's wrong. But then you sit back and go, well, I'm only going to find what I'm looking for, right? So if I'm looking for bad, I'm going to find it. But if I'm also going to look for joy, it'll be there.
Yes, I always say that, because obviously laughter and, dementia wasn't anybody's first guess, and I always say, yes, it is sad. I'm not saying it's not sad, but it's not sad every second. And so if you can find those moments, if you can be available to those moments that aren't sad and do your best to kind of inflate them, like you're, blowing up a balloon, you'll have such a much more satisfying experience for both of you. And, it's interesting what you said about, the people not being the same and we're not the same. And one of the things that I have not actually said very often is that my mother is a completely different person in the best sense of the word. She is so loving and generous and present, totally present. And that's really just not how she lived her life. She was a real estate broker also, but she did residential real estate in Manhattan, very, very competitive. And always concerned with money and, going to the right places. God bless her. She was just a New York City woman. And now she is so lovely and so moving with all of that gone. Just the essence of who she is actually this really loving, beautiful woman. And I would not have known that if I didn't show up. If she didn't have the disease, then I wasn't lucky enough to be able to show up for it. But that's a very rare point of view. And so I think it's interesting that this is what you talk about, that this is in fact a gift in some ways.
Very much so. To me, dementia is an opportunity to learn different levels of unconditional love I didn't even know existed. I didn't really even know what unconditional love was. I thought, when I got married, I love my husband. When I had a child, okay, I really get unconditional love. But then as my mom's disease progressed, there became these other levels that were really almost a spiritual level. I can't even put it in words. But because she lost her filters and she was kind of a free bird, and she no longer judged. She became the safest place in the world to go sit.
Yes.
Because she wasn't going, oh, Lori, what about this? There was none of that. It was like, it was like no matter who I was in that moment, she still loved me. And you're going to get me crying. And so again, there are so many levels of gifts that are there, but we have to be open to them. Like one of the things when you were talking about being silly, one of my favorite pictures of my mom is she's got red lipstick on and a lot of blush, and she's got a red bow and a red hat. And in Minnesota, in the winter, they have these singers that dress up and sing, and they're all big women, and she looked like one of them. But she had this big beaming smile, and her eyes were just glistening. And my brothers looked at that picture very different than me.
Oh, interesting.
They looked at that picture and said, "That's ridiculous. Why are they making her up like that?" And I'm like, she is having a ball. How can you not see the joy?
Wow.
How can you not see the joy? And that was another gift through the disease my mom gave me, was she taught me to play as an adult, because I was a very serious person. I was kind of like your mom. You know, I was in real estate too. And, you know, there were things to do and responsibilities. And, you know, I was a go-getter, and I multitask, and I prided myself on that. That was another thing, you know, that kind of fell by the wayside. I realized one day when I snapped at my mom when she repeated herself 45 times in 10 minutes, because I didn't think it was funny. I had stuff to do, places to go to. Busy gal here, Ma, you know, work with me. I mean, that was really, I didn't come out and say that, but that was my mental
energy.
And I snapped at her, and I felt horrible. And then I realized that I couldn't focus on my tasks. Yeah, they need to be done, and they're all for her, so it looks person-centered. But I needed to learn to live graciously alongside her and support her. And so to do that, I had to focus on not my tasks first, but I had to focus on 3 simple things. Was she safe? Was she happy? Was she pain-free? That changed my approach. That made me realize I didn't have to do a lot of things that I thought I had to do, or I didn't have to put the time restrictions on that I did. And it allowed me to play, or it allowed me to just sit next to her on the couch and not say a word. All of this is about getting us to feel all the different emotions, because and to not stuff them. And, you know, if we can laugh, laughter, as you well know, changes our body chemistry.
Right.
It's a great connective tool. You have wonderful stories to be able to share with people, and it's contagious.
Right.
It's contagious. And you must see that all the time. You know, you get one person going, and then everyone's, you know, kind of curious, like, what's going on over there? I love what you're doing. I think it's incredible work. And I think it is healing work for all sides.
Yeah. Very moved by even the comedians' experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're all so grateful and moved by their own experience, and feel like that this is a way to use their talent in such a healing way. And they form real relationships, because ideally for the one-on-one work where a comedian is like assigned to a person, they come every week and they really create relationship with the person. So they feel that connection, because when we get a new client, like for one-on-one, there's an intake form, and it has, I think, 17 questions on it that the family fills out. And it's all about the person, everything about the person, where they're from, what they did, what they liked, the music, you talked about music. We do a lot with music, a lot of singing, movies, actors, pets, relatives, someone they didn't like, someone, you know, because the whole idea is for the comedian to be able to come in and just roll with all these different details from their life, with the intention of making a cognitive connection with them. So, you know, and so for the people who are doing the work, they end up knowing a lot about the person and feeling very connected to them. Plus, when you're caring for someone, it's very intimate.
Well, you know, one of the things that I like about what you're saying, you know, because a lot of communities do that intake work, but many staff don't know how to apply it. And what a fun way to apply that history and that knowledge. And, you know, I go around the country and I see a lot of different communities, and, you know, many of them are very, very structured. pretty much all of them will say that they're person-centered.
Right.
And I don't even care for that term anymore. I think it's overused and underdelivered. I like to use the term relationship-based. And to me, that's at your core. I know this person. I know I can get them to laugh through these triggers of their own, to bring up and to recreate those feelings. And so often we forget that, how we make somebody feel is really the most important thing that we do. And it can be simple. And, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It can be a smile. It can be a hello. It can be a wink. It can be, whatever it is. It can be a laugh. It's endless to be able to do that. But, what your group is doing, in my opinion, is making people feel valued and worthy of participating.
Yeah. And being seen, that's a big thing too. And I always say, we can't guarantee that the person's going to laugh. You can't guarantee that with healthy people, that they're going to laugh. But you can I definitely believe that the laughter on call person that's showing up you're going to have an experience that you wouldn't otherwise have. You're going to have a connection and a feeling of being seen and engaged with, completely focused, with no judgment. And it's going to be different than anything else. It's not like people coming in with a guitar and singing and, half the people are asleep. It's no, we're really focused on the individual and having them feel seen and connected to, and no shame. And that's why I love using comedians, because they're very courageous people. I don't know about their personal life, but their spirit is very courageous. They walk into a room of strangers and they try to make them laugh. And so they're very suited to this kind of interaction, where you may come up against someone who's the not laughing person in the audience, because we all have stories of we're killing and then there's one person not laughing, and that's the one we have to make laugh. And basically that's who you're playing to sometimes, is that one person who doesn't want to laugh. And so what do? You have to be creative, and you have to go through your intake form in your head, ooh, I could sing Sinatra right now. Maybe that'll work, And that's why I love using the comedians, and I think they like the challenge too. They're up for it.
Oops. And to me, it's all about the creativity too. That I think sometimes, a lot of times actually, family and sometimes staff as well think that there's one approach.
Right.
And there's not. And every environment, every moment's going to be a little bit different. And so, to me, what you're teaching family and staff alike is to have a toolkit.
Totally.
And to not give up, that it can happen. Or I would imagine that you run into people that, they're not big laughers to begin with. But because I've seen that myself, where, they're like, well, no, that's just not my thing. And
right.
They might not be able to say that, but they were always really reserved. But then as they see other people loosen up over time, over that repetition, it changes, and they get permission without having, someone specifically say it, because they're modeling it.
Yeah.
They're modeling it for them.
That's what we try to do. And when we teach in the interactive storytelling, we always start with there's no wrong answers. Everybody clap. You make a mistake, yay! We really, it's only good if you're participating. That's the goal. So, no mistakes, and that's true with the training too. Obviously there are mistakes when you're caregiving, but basically your day-to-day is to be flexible and improvise in the moment and let go of the moment before. That's something I really talk a lot about, because I know that, and this just happened to me yesterday with a client. I said, so should we go for a walk? You want to go for a walk? No, I don't want to go for a walk. Why would I want to go for a walk? Look at those people. I don't want to be one of them walking. He had this whole thing, right? And then he had some dessert. And then I said, so what do you think? You maybe want to go for a walk? And he said, yes, I would like to. That's a fine idea. Let's go for a walk. So you're like, what? Like, you know, you have to let go. I can't be attached to, well, but 5 minutes ago you said a walk was a dumb idea. No. 5 minutes ago, it was a dumb idea to him. And now it's 5 minutes later, and it's a good idea. So the job as the caregiver is to let it go and be in this moment. Okay, I guess it's a good idea. I mean, it's hard to do, particularly when people are agitated. It's very hard not to take that in. God bless the caregivers at Silverado. They have to deal with a lot because they don't drug. So there's a lot of behavior there that they have to manage. So you also really have to protect yourself as a caregiver. You know?
Well, but I think once you embrace this concept of living in the moment and letting go and knowing that you always have another moment, like I was one of those where I have this like large inner critic that lives in my head that tells me what a scumbag and rotten person I am and I could do better. And it's like, you know, and I just have learned to like say, heard ya, bye, you know, out of my head. There's another moment and that I can always learn to do better and really let that go. And when I finally got to the point of actually being able to do that, my life was so much lighter. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't feel so heavy. I didn't feel like I had to control every single second where I did before. And I was the one that put that on myself, but we don't even know that we're doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that this is a beautiful thing for not only the person diagnosed to feel included and to be able to give them joy, but to teach staff and families, because you know, this is something that isn't just used with dementia.
Right.
You know, improv's been around a long time, you know, and making us laugh. And it's just, it's a nice skill to be able to have. It's a nice way to look at the world differently and more simply and to have more joy.
Right.
And again, who doesn't want that? So I know our audience is going to want to know, how do I get a hold of these guys? And you know, how do I hire a comedian if I'm a family member or if I'm a community? Where do I go? What do I do?
Okay, so we just go to the website. It's very easy, laughteroncall.com, and the phone number will be there, and you can check in with us. Right now, we're running a holiday special through the first of the year, so you want to check that out. But just email us. We call you right back. We can find comedians everywhere. We are finding comedians everywhere, and we love what we do, so it's really fun for us, and we'll get you hooked up. And it's a lot in, you know, what we in Hollywood would call casting. You know, we have to find the right person, because that's a lot of it is. And we've been doing it now for a while, so I feel like we have a sense of who would be a good fit, and then we get them all trained with various dementia information so they know what they're walking into and how to adapt what they're doing. Obviously, you know, you have to be flexible, but you never want to laugh at somebody. I make a big distinction between laughing with and laughing at, and we get them up to speed, and they go and make it happen. And then in terms of the training, same thing. You just write to me, and we can organize a schedule, and I'm happy to come. We're setting up webinars as well, but I'm always happy to come to a community.
Well, and I think the value of the in-person is just, you know, for communities, you know, looking, I know your budgets are tight, but an in-person session, I think, is well worth your while. And I haven't been part of it, but I just know as a speaker myself, and in the skill set to be able to hear the laughter, to have the experience, you know, themselves of trying things is very different than.
Absolutely. And also it's a very team building experience, because everyone, I have an acronym and everybody learns these tools. But then we look at, okay, what's the hardest moment in your day? Or tell us the hardest moment. And because you have the whole staff there, from like the kitchen to the laundry to the floor people, like people really get to appreciate, okay, what are some of the individual departments facing, and we all figure out how to use the tools that we've just learned to break tension and to keep going and to create some laughter. You talked about like appreciation, and I have that as part of the training too, like appreciate each other. Like, hey, I just saw what you did there. That was amazing. Just take a moment. And I love using, because with nonverbal, you have a lot of downtime. So I really love just telling my mother I love her. Like, there's always a moment to say that. I love you. Thank you. I appreciate that you did X, Y, Z. And it gets in there. So yes, I don't know. That was a babbly answer.
No. I think, like when you said the quiet time and still communicating, we can still communicate. We can still read. One of the things I tell people when I speak is that, we have come to accept that a person in a coma can take everything in. We need to expand that to dementia. Because what you had mentioned earlier about, I really believe, and I know I've gone to conferences where they say, oh, their senses are dulled. And I would argue that tenfold. And the people with dementia that I talk to say their senses have all elevated. It's kind of like a person who's blind or hard of hearing, the other senses come and lift them. And I think we have to look at that approach and believe that and look for the answers. I don't think we're always looking for the right things because we have a set free belief of what is happening. Can you give us a couple of examples of comedy care in action and kind of showing us how that courage and that creativity can really make a difference in a person's life?
I'm thinking about comedy care in action. We already talked about like the need to really throw yourself in physically and vocally and all that sensitivity you just talked about. Sometimes you talk in a high voice and then maybe it sounds like a cartoon. And you're, to not be, and you don't have to be a trained actor to do that. You just have to feel free to do that. So I think sometimes just being able to throw yourself into a different voice or a different physical position or very much using your body and your voice in ways that are non-traditional and unexpected. Big thing with laughter is the element of surprise. So, I'm not saying you play peekaboo because that's too childlike, but there are things that you can do like that surprise someone. And always singing. And I don't even, not to be Barbara Streisand, I'm just saying like the freedom to sing, to just, you can pull out your phone and, find a song from 1957 and sing. And you'll be surprised. I've seen amazing things. People with their head down that you think are not there, and you start singing some Debbie Reynolds tune or something from Carousel, and they're singing under it. It's just so I think, those are some good ones. I know, like, when we do the group work, we always ask for input and suggestions, kind of like that game Mad Libs. So we do storytelling like that. And so everybody and there's no wrong answer. So if you're going to be, one time someone said you're goat yoga instructors. And so everyone had to act like goats and do yoga. And there's nobody judging you. It's just having the freedom to change the energy. That's another thing, is just simply changing the energy in the room, because a lot of time the energy is low. And so if you can come in and just bring life and whatever that looks like, it's going to change the energy in the room. And always to say, we always say hello to everybody in the room, even if we're doing one-on-one. We acknowledge everybody in the room and make eye contact with them. I see you. Good morning. How are you? And that makes a difference. Like, it's the smallest things that are not necessarily creative. I think they speak more to what you were talking about at the beginning, about being present and slowing down and saying, I see you. How are you? I'm great. And and not being afraid to monologue because they're listening. So you might as well say, oh, there was so much traffic. I can't believe I got here. And it's so beautiful out. Do you want to go out? Should we go out? The sun is amazing. And like, that's what comedians have an advantage, because we talk, like, we're used to talking spontaneously. But anybody can talk spontaneously. You don't have to be a comedian. You just have to not be invested, just another point you made earlier, in perfect sentences coming back to you. Like,
yeah, I agree with that, but I also think one thing that holds people back is feeling judged by other people. You know, and comedians, to me, they are, they're not worried about being judged. They are focused on making a connection and the value of the connection. And we've lost that because society is so judgmental. And when you put away that it's right or it's wrong, and you just say, we're together.
Yes.
And one of the things people with dementia tell me all the time, which I think is hilarious, they say, oh, everyone says, live in our world. And yet all of our care partners are the one making up the routines. No, you have to live in our routines, not your routines. And I think that is something that you are getting people to understand too, that the flexibility and being fluid is a lot of fun, and it takes away a ton of stress because it doesn't have to be perfect anymore.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, you ask is people all over here, Mom, you look great today, Mom. How are, everything's good, Mom, right? Everything's good. And the hair's dyed and they're trying to keep Mom. And it's like, not, maybe Mom isn't good in that moment. Maybe Mom wants to express something else. So to be okay with wherever the person is, which will actually move you to laughter. That's like the number 2 in the acronym, is like being honest. Because you're not going to get to laughter if you're very gripped and everything's fine and I'm fine, everything's fine. You can't, who can laugh through that? Yeah. That investment in what should be is what keeps you from laughing.
The other thing that happens is we might be really tense or we might be really angry, but we put on the Stepford wife smile. Everything is fine. And yet we don't even understand that our body language is like going thoink, thoink, and it's just going crazy all over. And we're giving them a mixed message.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Causing them a contradiction and frustration because they know what they're seeing isn't what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And they become, I think, as the disease progresses, more of a feeling person.
Yes.
And so I think that's really important. The other thing that the disease taught me is you can have these beautiful stories to share that might not make sense. Like my daughter and her boyfriend would go up and visit my mom. Well, the boyfriend, when she was 18, he wanted to talk about was cars. And so all of a sudden they're entering into this conversation with my mom, and my daughter comes home. Mom, Grandma was talking about when she had a pink Cadillac and she had spinners and a sound system. I'm like, honey, there weren't anything, there weren't spinners and there weren't sound systems. That's not what they called them back in that day. And Grandma never had a pink Cadillac. She was an Avon lady, but she always kind of envied Mary Kay in the pink Cadillac. But she wanted to be part of the conversation. So, when we step into their world, when we just accept what they're saying as the truth and not correcting, not probing, it's a lot more fun for everybody. And then family and staff alike can have these great stories, and not, again, that you're laughing at them. Right. You're just happy with them. Yeah. And what a great place to be. What a great place to be. I'm going to share with you one last story that happened with my mom that kind of brings that point home too, because I think so often families miss out the stories. Like when my dad died, my brother said, well, where'd you get all these stories? And I remember just going, I was there. And then that made me feel really bad because they weren't. And one of my favorite stories was a one that was really painful, but it turned into really joyful because it's silly and it makes no sense, but it worked. And it was when my mom was really having a difficult time getting pulled up in a Hoyer lift. And she had just moved to the lowest functioning unit. So it was a really sad day for me as her daughter. And of course, that's not what the community called it, but that's what we know it is. And I was standing outside her door, and my mom is like screaming profanities. Now, this is a woman who used to carry around a bar of soap in case we said something wrong, you know? And so that was not my mom. But she was so fearful and she was so angry, yet the staff were really calm and ping-ponging back and forth going, Dorothy, honey, we just need your knees back and your arms straight. We're going to push this button. We're going to pull you up. My mom's like, and she's just ripping them apart. And I'm crying outside. My stomach's in a knot. And I remember just praying, no one should be this scared. This is so wrong on so many levels. And yet the staff was doing everything that they could. Mm-hmm. So I walked in the door, and I still have, tears coming down my face. And I'm still praying, give me something. Mm-hmm. She doesn't deserve this. And all of a sudden, I feel this arm go around my shoulder, mm-hmm. and I hear my dad whisper in my ear, have her go water skiing, Lori. Ask her to go water skiing. And I looked at the bed next to my mom going, I'm having a nervous breakdown. That bed's for me. My dad's been dead for years. This makes no sense. My mom can't go water skiing. And I immediately dismissed that. Uh-huh. And I sat there with this, stomach in a knot and tears going, rolling down my face and hearing my mom scream. And I thought, I got nothing to lose. So I walked up to the bed, and, her feet are off the ground, and she's kind of leaning back, and she has this, big, almost like a car seat belt around her back that's going to pull her up, and these ropes around her wrist, and she's just really unsteady, but she's still, screaming like a banshee. And I said, Mom, you want to go water skiing? And in that nanosecond, she turned from the staff who she was facing, and she looked at me at the side with this big, bright smile. And she said, well, yeah, sure. And I said, okay, Mom, knees bent, arms straight. And I said, hit it. And I pushed the button. And every time I tell this story, I hear the machine kind of roar and pull my mom up. My mom went up, and the ropes are around her wrists. But she was gripping a tow rope.
Oh my God.
And that worked for months. And so sometimes we have to get past ourselves to find these moments that will help them. And so, they were able to use that with my mom to say, let's go water skiing for months. And then I would come in as her daughter, and she would be talking, I'm like, what'd you do? Oh, I went water skiing today. And for whatever reason, that stuck with her. And so then we would talk about, did you slalom? Did you spray? Did you go barefoot? Did you go off the dock? And all these terms. And she was so joyful.
Wow, that's a great story.
None of it happened in that moment, but it happened in her mind, and it was part of her past. And again, it was because my dad always taught everybody how to ski using those 3 commands. And so knowing the history, like when you go in and you're asking families for these resources, they're huge. And they're things that we don't normally think of, but we need to teach people. And I think you're doing brilliant work. And I adore what you're doing. And I hope your phone rings off the hooks.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, that's very moving.
Good.
Oh,
okay, I'm gonna cut that part off. But no, really powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Such a good story, the water ski story.
It's pretty funny. When I tell it, I have a cartoon that I put up with my mom, who's water skiing, and she's like, 5 foot and 300 pounds, she's water skiing and people just
Oh my God.
laughing her, the time and I won't put this stuff in, but she also fell in a sand trap one time, golfing, and she's doing the breaststroke. I mean, she's arms outreached and down to the side, lifting the head to adjust for the sand. But it was all because, her childlike mind was putting her in a safe place. And that's what you're doing. You're putting people in a safe, comfortable place. That's a pretty big gift you're giving people.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
So people can go to laughteroncall.com, and you're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
By, again, just using Laughter on Call. And then your phone number is 805-254-HA-HA, which is 4242. So that's 805-254-4242, which again is HA-HA. So that was a pretty good way to grab your phone number there.
Yeah. It took a little effort, but it was worth it.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. In wrapping up, I just want to thank Dani so much for joining us today. Laughter on Call. What a fabulous idea. Don't forget to check them out. It's real easy. Just laughteroncall.com. Be a wonderful holiday season gift or a kickoff for the new year as well. For a family who's dealing with this, for a loved one who's diagnosed, or maybe even for a community that that could use a little boost and a little fun. For other resources, check out alzheimerspeaks.com. We have lots of them there. So have a wonderful holiday season. Bye, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.